He threw out the idea that you could operate successfully in the world on the basis of vast generalizations.
Ageism happens when we stereotype or discriminate against people based on age, whether directed at those older than us or younger than us. For example, if you've ever thought young people are so lazy and entitled.
And my mother, I remember my mother scrubbing them floors, wooden floors on her knees.
No carpet?
No carpets, wooden floors with a brush. Used to make those floors sparkle. Today they got it so soft, they got a washing machine, they got this, they got that.
Or old people are so lazy and entitled. That's ageism. And yes, I hear both of those a lot.
Ageism is in business. Ageism is in healthcare. I also think that ageism manifests in the generational labels.
Social organisms are really hardwired to make a basic dichotomy about the social world, which is those organisms who count as us's and those who count as them's.
If you're not sure that was a predator, it was too late. So your brain evolved to take this meaningless data and make meaning from it, and that's the process of creating perception. And then we hold on to those assumptions.
The baby boomers, millennials, Gen X, Gen Y, all that stuff. It doesn't make sense. When you think about the baby boomers, they were 1946 to 1964. In 1946, that means if you were born then, you were in some formative years in the 1960s. The 1960s was a very unique period of time.
Was it then a generation gap?
It was more than a gap. It was people whose sensibilities, whose political viewpoints had been hammered out, at least in part, in struggle with Stalin and the great betrayal of the revolutionary communist dream, had once and for all decided that they were against anything having to do with communism. And anybody who tried to open that question up again.
Once you attach to a tribe, no longer is content as important, the substance of the arguments. At the end of the day, the most important element is loyalty. And the most serious offense that you can commit against your own tribe is to betray that tribe.
What we were doing was not just wrong, it was a sin, it was not a mistake, it was an aggressive, evil act. So when we began to raise questions, why are we always against people just because they call themselves communists? Isn't it possible that in certain circumstances you could be communist and a good guy? That was heresy. That was a forbidden idea.
Betraying the tribe, that's a taboo. If I break a taboo, I'm going to be excommunicated, I'm going to be ridiculed, or worse.
The pain of it all became most acute in terms of my relationship with my dad. He couldn't understand what I was upset about in terms of the Vietnam War. He couldn't understand why I was so upset that with a wife and 3 kids and a pretty little house on Sunnyside Street, I would throw that all over, quit my good job, which to him was a step up. He had worked in a factory all his life, and here his son was white collar with a college education. That to him was terrific. Why complain about that? He thought I was making a stupid mistake. It led to an enormous rupture in our relationship, which had been flowing along beautifully in the years that I worked in the defense business. He happily came to see the family. He was the world's most perfect grandfather. For the first time, I think, in his life, he felt good about me, his otherwise feckless son. But now I'd grown feckless again, and he didn't understand it. He didn't like it. He was going to hassle me about it every chance he got. We wanted to open that question up for reconsideration in particular contexts, such as Cuba, where we could see that some good guys did call themselves communists for some reason. Let's try to understand why. And in Vietnam, what was in that? Would we, had we been born to those circumstances, perhaps have been moved by the same reasoning?
I tried to make him clear that even to be in Auschwitz and not to try every day to come away from there is for me horrible and impossible. I could never understand human being can act like this, and it would not change in any position if this is my father or not. It is really, for me, against all ethic and human understanding and nature.
And then you have another baby boomer who was born in 1964. They kind of grew up in the 1980s. The 1980s was a completely different time, but we call these people both boomers as if it means something. So what we've done is we've created another label, another way for us to stereotype people.
The audience brings with them their own likes and dislikes, prejudices, fears, and value systems. People from the middle class dream that they can get ahead and move up higher, have an automobile or two, have a house in a certain range of income. They all want to work. You could go on. And if I described all of that, I would describe exactly what the Beals put down.
The Beals are who they are and have no intention of changing that. Not for anyone. Society accepts that as long as they hide themselves away. Out in the open and unashamed, the Beals threaten how we view the world and what we value, down to the very capitalistic system that we try to move ahead through. The Beals are invulnerable to the opinions of others. They gave up their privacy because they wanted to be seen, because they wanted to be recognized. We don't want to recognize them. We don't want to see that there are other ways of living, other ways of being outside our social norms. And yet, their humanity forces us to realize just how fragile those norms were in the first place. They don't want to be like us, but at times, against our better judgment, we might want to be a bit more like them. All through his life, Albert Maysles was asked if Grey Gardens was exploitive. His whole life, he defended his film, but the question still remains. Did Grey Gardens violate the Beals' privacy? Well, yes, but they themselves are the violators. They puncture the veil of privacy, separating themselves in the world. And through our onlooking, we are challenged. We are reminded that our ways are not the only ways. And when we respond by claiming that the Beals were robbed of their dignity, we're really complaining that we've been robbed of ours.
Do you have any disappointments in Obama? There are people who say the expectations of him were so great. He was supposed to get rid of racism, fix everything.
Yeah.
Is that unfair?
He's there for 8 years. It's not fair.